Don't be fooled by them telling you, hey, everything's looking good. And I want to go ahead and cover something really quick before we go on to our next screen here. When the government tells you, yes, we want to normalize inflation at 2%. Do you know what they're telling you? Yes, we want to steal your money, but we only want to steal it at 2% instead of 6%. It's still stealing your money.
Today, in today's video, our honorable guest is Alaska Prepper going to talk about the inflation. Before starting our video, please take some time to check out our channel, and if you like what you see, you are welcome to subscribe. In economics, inflation is an increase in the general price level of goods and services in an economy. Where the general price level rises, each unit of currency buys fewer goods and services. Consequently, inflation corresponds to a reduction in the purchasing power of money.
Because for those of you that don't understand, inflation, the definition of is increasing the money supply. And how does the government increase the money supply? One of two ways, right? They lower rates so that people can borrow more and therefore inflate the money supply in the economy. Therefore, the prices of things go up. And or the government borrows money and then that money goes out into the economy. And when I say the government borrows money, I don't mean the government selling bonds to you, Joe Schmo or Jane Schmo in the street. It means the government selling bonds, banks buying the bonds, and then the Federal Reserve giving the banks the money, which is inflationary. You see, when Joe Schmo or Jane Schmo in the street, when they buy bonds from the government, they're pretty much just lending the government money. But the money that they're lending them is money that they've already earned. It's money that they had in the bank or wherever, but it's money that was already out in the economy. So they're taking that money that was already in the economy, they're transferring it or lending it to the government, and then they're getting a bond for that. So that really doesn't change the money supply in the economy. However, when the government creates bonds, and then banks buy the bonds with your deposits, ladies and gentlemen, by the way, and then they take those bonds and give it to the Federal Reserve in exchange for fiat, that is inflationary.
The Producer Price Index, PPI, program measures the average change over time in the selling prices received by domestic producers for their output. The prices included in the PPI are from the first commercial transaction for many products and some services.
The producer index hints at where consumer prices are headed. So you see, this article here is being forthcoming. They're pretty much telling you, hey, when you look at the consumer price index, it's a leading indicator, and it gives you an idea as to where prices are headed. So let's take a look at this. And here they say that the new data on Thursday morning shows that U.S. whole prices rose 0.7% in January. Those prices are what suppliers charge businesses and other customers. And that's the biggest jump they've made since June. So you notice how on the other article, they were kind of like biased towards trying to tell you, hey, things are easing up. You know, this is the best CPI that we've had. I think it was since June as well. Here they're telling you that this is the worst PPI that came out since June of last year. All right. This data comes courtesy of the Producer Price Index, brought to you by our friends at the Bureau of Labor Statistics as well. So they tell you what they want you to know, ladies and gentlemen. That's why it's so important for you to do your research so that you can understand how these things work, and therefore it will allow you to better prepare. And here they say different day, different data, but all are pointing to a reversal in inflation, also known as disinflation. I don't believe that that's so. And here they say there is a catch though. We don't appear to be disinflating as quickly as some had hoped. And disinflation, again, is just the rate at which inflation is going down. All right, and inflation is the rate at which inflation is going up. So there's a positive and a negative. And as you can see, we're not really disinflating, ladies and gentlemen. They changed the prices. I mean, they changed the way that they measure the prices. That's one way that they do it. And then they just flat out only tell you what they want you to know.
Energy prices are making inflation more intractable. In October 2022, Germany's Trade Union Confederation organized marches in several cities to protest skyrocketing energy prices and the growing cost of living. Prices for natural gas, heating oil, and electricity have risen dramatically in Germany. Energy prices often attract disproportionate attention from news media commentators, policymakers, and academics. Let's listen what the Alaska says about this.
Inflation is sticking around. Energy prices are up 5%, the biggest driver in the rise of prices of goods, and we all know that. On the other hand, food prices for suppliers dropped 1% month over month, which El-Erian says is a bright spot. They're not taking into consideration here, and I know that this article is a couple of days old, but they're not taking into consideration, ladies and gentlemen, and we have to understand what's going to happen this year with our planting season. I believe that the catastrophe that took place in Ohio and is still taking place, I believe that is going to affect what foods can be grown in that area, if any at all. There are 75,000 farms in Ohio, and I would say that most of them are going to be affected with the contaminants that were released into the air by that controlled burn. So think about all of those farms in that area that won't be able to produce. And I would venture to guess that most people throughout the rest of this year are going to start looking at their labels and asking, where did this food come from, if they do decide to plant in those areas. Over the last 12 months, food was one of the largest sources of inflation for Americans, El-Erian said, and I believe it will continue to be so, ladies and gentlemen. And to finish it off, they say here, you should care as a consumer about PPI because it is a hint about what's going to happen to your consumer prices in the future. Right, explained this economist. PPI is also an important window into what's happening in the supply chain, she said. The big picture, the latest PPI report shows policymakers are a long way off from declaring victory on inflation.
What are your thoughts about the situation of inflation and rising prices of energy? Let us know in the comment section below. If you like our content, give this video a big thumbs up and do subscribe to our channel. Thank you for spending a bit of time here today, and many blessings to you and your families.